Hey everyone, what's going on? Thanks for tuning in to Relevant Jukebox, and today we're going to talk about the latest album from Black Country New Road, Ants from Up There. So, this is the sophomore full-length album from the rock band Black Country New Road. And even though this band is now on their second album, they still feel kind of like sort of an enigma for the rock scene. I remember hearing about them a long time ago, right when they dropped their single Sunglasses, and everyone was kind of talking about this band, saying they were the next big thing, watch out for their debut, and they did finally drop it to a lot of critical acclaim and fanfare, except for maybe myself. Now, even if you didn't really love the debut, I feel like it's pretty obvious that you could hear there's really a lot of potential in the band. And in a strange and really unfortunate turn of events, the vocalist Isaac actually announced right before this album dropped that he's going to be leaving the band, which I think just kind of kneecaps the band overall in general. I mean, even his contributions as a songwriter, I'm sure will take a big effect, but his vocaling style is not really going to be replaceable. At least I don't think it will be, and I feel like he's a huge part of this band. So I'm really interested to see what's going to happen, because they did say they are going to continue forward, but here we are at a sophomore full-length album, and after consuming this thing multiple times, I can definitely say that it is an improvement on the debut, and truthfully, there are a few tracks on this album here that, I don't really know how else to describe it, but it is easily some of the most emotionally impactful music I think I've ever heard in my life. So I will say, forewarning, if you haven't heard of this band before, or you haven't heard this album yet, I mean, you're in store for a record that sounds like a man having a mental breakdown. So just be aware of that. Now, one thing I think this band really nailed on this album with their sound is just like the really warm, organic live feeling of it. This album sports an amazing recording that has this, again, very in-the-moment feeling, like you're listening to them at a live local bar. But the way that the guitars sound on here, they ring through to like really early slowcore of the 90s. So stuff like Red House Painters come to mind, but you could also think like early Modest Mouse at times with how drippy some of the guitar work gets. And they accompany that with this instrumentation from woodwind instruments and pianos that is just so beautifully elegant. I mean, it adds so much dynamic to what this band is doing, and I think it accompanies the guitars and the drumming so perfectly. Now, the one question is, do you want to be taken along one of these rides? Because this album is chock full of really long, drawn-out, sprawling, emotional rock songs. And for me, the answer is some of the time. Not necessarily the entire way, unfortunately. However, when this band does really nail it, do they nail it? I mean, like I said, it's some of the most emotionally stirring music I've ever come across, and it really does almost like take your breath away on some of these tracks. The first one that really stands out and comes to mind is Haldern, right in the middle. It has this really slow churning, kind of repetitive, tension-building progression to it, but in my opinion, is easily one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard in my life. I mean, the way that the pianos just kind of work and weave themselves around the guitar work to start off this track is just like, I don't know, it really is unexplainable. And Isaac's vocal performance is so harrowing on this track as well, especially as it builds in intensity towards the end. I mean, each drum hit and bass hit is just so emotionally impactful on the song. Another track I really ended up enjoying was Good Will Hunting. I think it's one of the best tracks they've ever turned out. It has a little bit more uppity feeling to it overall, but I mean, the lyrics wouldn't suggest that. However, there is a really odd standout moment in the lyrics where he's referencing Billie Eilish's style. He also does that earlier on the record on another track too, and it just really ends up sticking out for some reason. And I also have to mention the closing track on here, Basketball Shoes. Now, this one is a lengthy monster. It's over 12 minutes long and has multiple phases across its runtime. However, I mean, it does feel way too long, honestly. I mean, I think some of the parts that come in towards the end are so unnecessary. It almost feels like it concludes the album at like 2 or 3 different spots. And realistically, I think the best time that they could have closed it at is probably around 9.5 minutes. I don't really feel like anything after that really needed to happen. But man, is it an awesome ride up until that point. I mean, there's one part where the track really like kind of breaks down from its initial start and build and kind of veers off a little bit for a second, and then it kind of hard changes into a really nice, bright guitar line. And I mean, when this part comes in, it's so impactful. It made me like stand up from my seat while I was listening to it and like cheer, because it's just like, Oh! So, I mean, there are a lot of moments on this album that occur that really were what I was looking for from the band up until this point, and I think they really nailed it. And, like, working in this style of rock, it's really weird. Like, the sound of this album kind of feels like a mixture between the Funeral era Arcade Fire and, like, the really insular nature of Slint. And Isaac's vocal styles remind me of a mixture of, like, Nick Cave and Mark Kozelek of some sorts. So it's a really insular album and listen overall. Like, you're not going to probably jam this with your friends in really any other setting. So for me, what it really ends up coming down to with this band is like, are they going to keep my attention throughout the entire track? Is it going to be worth it? Is it really going to hit me or not? And as I was alluding to earlier in the review, a lot of these tracks that doesn't happen. Tracks like Snow Globe, I think, drag on way too long. I mean, that guitar line that really carries the track is just not really that satisfying enough to do so for over 6 minutes of like an intro. Also, Concord and the place where he inserted the blade have like similar issues where the track will progress to a certain point and then stop and then just repeat itself, and this lasts for over 6 minutes. I also didn't really think the album had like a really strong start. I mean, you know, having an intro like this where it's like, you know, under a minute long, it doesn't need to be there. And the track that really kicks the album off, I enjoyed the start of it. It has a very distinct sounding beginning, but I don't know, I just kind of grew tired of the really showy, you know, aesthetic that comes with the track. It almost feels like I'm at like a High School Musical. And there's also like an instrumental interlude in the middle of the track list called Mark's Theme that is really beautiful, but doesn't really need to be there either. It doesn't really add anything to the album's listening experience, which is like another really weird issue I have with this album, which is like the track list feels out of order. I mean, the album feels as if it concludes on multiple spots and then picks back up again. It just feels all over the place to listen to as a holistic album experience. So, I mean, overall, I did enjoy this album leaving it. However, it did feel more like a mixed bag. The high points on here are absolutely insane. Still, if you are enamored with rock, I think you should get your ears on this. There's a lot of interesting things that this album and band have to bring to the table, but I would say buckle up and be ready for like an emotional roller coaster, as this thing is sort of all over the place. But I'm sure fans of this band are going to really enjoy that and find it appealing. And yeah, that's fine. It just really didn't strike me in that way. And with that being said, I'm feeling a 7.5 over here on Ants from Up There. So for all you collectors out there who want to grab this on a vinyl, there are a lot of different presses actually floating around. So in my description box down below, I'm going to have links to Black Country New Road's web store where you can get a deluxe pressing. They also have a collector's edition and a limited edition that has different cover art to it. And if you have heard this new Black Country New Road album, let me know what you think about it in the comments section down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and share, and if you want more content from me, hit that subscribe button. Peace.